A lot of people seem to be interested in my video about how to become a billionaire. And so I decided I'm going to go a little more granular and give you the core steps in a sequence of videos. So um, in that original video, I talked about kind of the end goal, what kind of assets are out there for billionaires to hold, and so that they can, get those points on the scoreboard that way. But Um, one of the interesting things, I've known a lot of billionaires. I've raised money from them. Some of them taught me little tricks and things that their secrets. One of my favorite lessons was from a guy named Horst Rechelbacher. He was the founder of the Aveda Corporation, and we were friends for a while until I screwed it up, basically. So, Horst, if you're listening to this, I apologize for being kind of a newbie. And this is kind of where the problem lies. When, we would all love to sit and just have a billionaire hold our hands, but they're busy. So I'm kind of second best. I'm going to describe my Billionaire Project, which I haven't quit totally yet. I've been at it for 20 years, but I failed so many times. And so one of the benefits you can have just from listening to these short videos or working with me as a student is just really two things. One, avoiding just the kind of mistakes that somebody's going to have when they're pursuing a big vision, right? Because to have $1 billion, unless you inherit it, for the most part, it's going to take some kind of focus, some kind of intention that is at a different level than most people. So again, if you're listening to this or we're working together, you're going to avoid a whole lot of mistakes. You're going to avoid a good 20 years worth of mistakes. And when you're trying to really organize wealth with velocity, those mistakes can be really challenging. Why do that? But if you go and say, well, I want to, get a mastermind of billionaires. Well, they don't necessarily want to teach you the ABCs. Or let's say, a lot of billionaires, they understand how finance works and financial markets. And it's like, you're not going to learn this stuff unless perhaps you've gone to an Ivy League business school where you really studied finance. And I think one of the things, if you look out at some of the more famous billionaires, not all of them, but a lot of the ones who are famous now had access to the top level of knowledge in the field of finance. So like Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, he went to college and he got a job at a company called D.E. Shaw. And D.E. Shaw is a boutique investment bank. So before he ever thought about starting Amazon, he had already mastered the field of finance. Bill Gates, his dad was the founder of a company that became known as K&L Gates. That was one of the top 2 securities law firms in the whole United States, and especially, on the West Coast, in Seattle. There's another, big one down in San Francisco, but like most of the deals of the country in the tech space were going through these 2 companies. So nice to have your dad kind of hold your hand while you're trying to figure out how to raise capital, how to structure capitalization tables. Elon Musk went to business school at University of Pennsylvania. So he studied a lot before he decided to embark on his first ventures. So he had an idea of how finance and capital work, and he had big dreams, and he knew he had to master that. And that's kind of how I got here. I still have big dreams. My dream is to create an ecological economy for real, not a charity economy. I mean, that's fine, but charities are such a tiny fragment of the whole economy. In fact, when I started on this, in 2001, the the gross revenues of all the environmental charities in the world were $2 billion a year. And the smallest Fortune 500 company was $3 billion a year. Now, they're probably both higher, but of course there's been inflation. So if we're saying there's 500 companies starting at $3 billion a year and then going up, I think in that era, Walmart was about $50 billion in revenue a year. And again, these we're talking 23 years ago. And I just looked at this like, there's no way. We have to really look at ecosystems totally differently, and they provide so much value. So every time we destroy an ecosystem, we're making our lives worse. And bit by bit, a number of different ideas came together, and I saw that through a commitment to protecting the vitality of ecosystems, it was something that could become a great enterprise. And so what I thought in 2001 was that for every charity, really, if you look at every charity in the world, they all have a vision of the future, which they can't ever get to because the charity financial platform is just too weak to achieve a vision of any real scale on their own. And they may try to leverage information, but the most powerful information is printed on our money supply because it represents the deepest commitments of society. And aside from how you just spend your time day to day, we use money to express what we're committed to as a society. And so, with that imbalance, it can't work. But I could see that if we started building the kind of companies that would exist in the future that these charities could envision, that would be a big economy. And so in order to do that, in order to help start those companies, I decided I would start a venture capital fund. Not really even a venture capital fund per se, but something called a business development company, which is a very highly regulated financial instrument. And the lawyers who know how to do this, even then were charging 20 years ago, $1,500 or more an hour. And one time I got one on the phone who knew how to do it. He had done it. He gave me an hour free. And I said, can I please pay you for another hour? He wouldn't even mentor me for another hour, even if I was paying his full legal rate. So that was how hard it was to get information around that vision. But the basic vision was, really, if you look for every environmental group in the world at that time, each one of them was pointing towards billions of dollars of economic opportunity. And my whole vision was start a fund, start the first fund, kind of get the knack, and then create a global network of investment funds, just like Walmart has a global network of Walmarts. Let's just leave it at that. Or Coca-Cola, you could say Coca-Cola takes responsibility for making sure that a bottle of Coke is within reach of everybody. And I even had, before I stopped drinking Coke altogether, I had a Coke up in the Himalayas of Nepal. I was, I think, a week and a half away from the closest road. And there you could still get a cold Coke. So why am I saying this? Is because we may not like those corporations and what they're doing. And maybe you do. It's not really about like or don't like, but what it is they were holding a global commitment. And so I decided, well, I could hold a global commitment to the world's ecosystems and express that by creating a global network of funds that would build out the visions of these various charities. And then when you look at the financial math of how investment fund management works, it's kind of like, you kind of know how real estate works. If you buy a bunch of rental properties and then you get a residual from all that. Well, you could also start an investment fund holding company. So if you look at companies like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, and those kind of companies, those are basically investment fund holding companies. And my vision was, and those guys have trillions of dollars under management. So, and this is why if you look at the Forbes 400, a really big percentage of them are in the finance world and fund managers. Now that's a really hard, that's like being in the, that's like getting into the big leagues in baseball or basketball. It's really hard, and pretty much everybody outside of the billionaires are just, you know, fumbling around, just trying to make ends meet. It's not a good, I don't really recommend that you get into finance, but I recommend that you understand it. And so by failing over and over again at just even getting the first one up, I learned how to raise $1 billion. Like if you want to raise $1 billion, I'll tell you how. And that's part of what this little series of videos is going to be about. Um, but, they say those who can't do teach. And I think that's kind of considered like a slight on teachers. But what I'm going to say is I learned so much from failing. I learned really the essence of success in any kind of venture. And so there's a pattern. You can say there's a success pattern in fulfilling any kind of vision that you might have. And if I could go back in time, like the basic idea was sound, I just didn't know how to execute. And I also didn't understand a certain aspect of, what people might call the billionaire mindset. And so you can skip all that. You can skip all that. So that's the point of this kind of next introduction video. And in the next videos, I'm going to go into more granular detail about what I would do if I could start over again with a vision that's worthy of $1 billion of asset value and more, really. I mean, the global opportunities in ecology and the plant-based economy and livable cities and healthcare, it's just trillions of dollars. So, if you have any interest in those fields, just, check in, go to my website, book a call, a discovery call, and, let's talk, let's work together. All right, on to the next one.